Ladies and gentlemen, the sound of the start of your weekend. Not the Top 20s betting show, sponsored by AK Bets, is what you're listening to or watching. George Elek and myself, Ali Maxwell, going through an EFL slate shimmering in sunlight, looking for shiny bits of value. It's for over 18s only. It's about betting, which comes with significant risks. So head to gambleaware.org to brush up on the risks. Make sure you're never betting more than you can afford to lose and never chase your losses. Last week, George, your punchy prices were not rewarded on the week, but keep knocking at the door. You never know. Morcambe and MK Dons, that sounded way more condescending than I meant it to. I meant, look, if you're picking a 16-5 nap and a 5-2 next best, you can't be discouraged after 1 week where they both lose 1-0. That's all I'm saying.
Agreed.
You all right with that?
Yeah, I'm fine with it. Yeah.
Good. Bobby Thomas was fouled for a penalty, but didn't score against Oxford. And let's talk about that Jaden Bogle versus Junior Firpo line.
Oh, my God.
Oh, mate.
So I basically said I fancied the lead fullbacks. I said that I looked at Firpo because he was double the price and he got into such good goal-scoring positions, having scored in the previous game, especially from headed opportunities. And then I was like, but he never really does that. Maybe it'll just be that game. And then he did it again and scored first goal. And I put up Bogle, who had one shot wildly wide. The good thing is one person did message and say that they backed Firpo off the back of it. So that makes me happy.
If you can just make the difference to one person in the world every week, George, you're doing a good thing. So well done. I got my nap and my next best in, which I was pretty pleased about. Coventry beating Oxford 3-2 at 11-10. And then Reading beating Wigan at 3-1 win at my next best. I still had a sore one, Wilson Isidore, who I'd said, so impressive. He's able to start so many games, play so many minutes. He was rested for Sunderland at Sheffield Wednesday. I'd highlighted Max Lowe as a weak spot and watched as a long punt forward completely baffled Max Lowe, who missed the ball. And Isidore's replacement, Mayenda, was able to score a simple goal and then another one in the second half. So that was pretty sore. It wasn't even void because Isidore came on at the end for no reason at all. Pretty upset about that. Charlton Win-to-nil was my long shot. They won 2-1, conceding from 30 yards. I enjoyed the logic of it. I'm feeling better this week, heading in with confidence. Maybe that's a concern. Maybe that's a good thing. Let's see, George, what's your best bet of the weekend?
My best bet is Bradford to beat Gillingham at even money. Both of my kind of main picks are down a similar line to my selections last week for my nap, which was Morecambe to beat Gillingham, and Gillingham won that game 1-0. That was Gillingham's first win in the league since December the 14th, and no complaints whatsoever. They were deserving winners on the day. Morecambe only had 3 shots. But they followed that up with a really poor display at Newport, where they were 3-0 down after 25 minutes and lost the game 3-1 up against a Newport side that you said on Monday's pod, rightly so, were on the beach, the first team to be on the beach. When you look at the league table now, it kind of feels to me like, my amateur psychology when it came to that Gillingham Morecambe game was wrong. And that actually that was in itself basically a 1-game season for Gillingham, which was partly why I kind of said that they'd start the game ahead. But Gillingham knew going into that game that if they could just win it and increase the gap between them and Morecambe by another 3 points, they're probably going to be safe. And despite Morecambe following up that poor performance with a really impressive win in midweek against AFC Wimbledon, you look at the league table now and Gillingham look safe. You have to think, unless they basically don't pick up another point all season, it's probably going to be too far. And at least at this moment, Gillingham will feel safe. And I think in part that might be why we saw them throw in such a poor performance on Tuesday night away at Newport. They got the win they needed, kind of a bit of a sigh of relief, and that's job done. And hosting a Bradford side who've just set a club record, 10 consecutive home wins on the bounce, is a game against a side whose season is absolutely not over. Who are taking on a side who are 2 points off Walsall, who are currently leading the League Two, who have a decent gap between them and fourth now as they try and bid for automatic promotion. This is a huge game for Bradford. And their home form has been kind of the bedrock of their decent form recently, but they've still won 3 of their last 5 away games, only losing one of those, and that was away at AFC Wimbledon, who have obviously got a really good home record. They've been to Salford and Bromley in their last 2 and beaten both of them, 2 teams who are infinitely better than Gillingham at the moment. So the way I see this, obviously even money about an away side isn't normally the way that you want to play these things, but it's probably the best team in the league right now against maybe the worst. with a huge need and desire for Bradford to win up against a side against Gillingham, who kind of rolled over in midweek, who looked like their seasons kind of should be saved by that win against Morcambe. So yeah, getting even money about a Bradford win is my best bet of the weekend.
I'm getting just a touch more than even money for Sheffield Wednesday to beat Plymouth Argyle via AK Bets, 21-20, 2.05 in the decimal. With Wednesday, this is partly one of those things that becomes a bit of a knock-on from Monday pod analysis and Monday pod feelings. And that is that I feel like pretty much every time I've spoken about Wednesday in the last couple of weeks on the Monday pod, I've been talking about Wednesday losing. And pretty much every time I've concluded that I think the team is performing pretty well, playing pretty well. They've lost 3 games in a row in the league. But I actually think if you take the 6, 7, 8 game stretch, it's probably one of the strongest spells of performances that Wednesday have put together this season. They've just played 3 of the top 5 and they've lost all of them. But against Sunderland, that was a game where it was pretty even, went toe-to-toe, certainly had plenty of chances, and there was a goal that Sunderland scored that would ordinarily have been disallowed for handball. Against Burnley, they lost 4-0, but anyone that saw that game knows that for the first hour, they were the better side, objectively the better side, and obviously fell apart once Burnley had gone 1-0 up. Against Coventry, absolutely went toe-to-toe with the team in the best form in the whole division right now, and lost the game in part down to a goal, or just a horrible goalkeeping error right at the end, which saw Sims tap in for 2-1. But we've also got impressive away wins in recent history. That's what makes me feel a bit better about things. A 2-0 win against QPR at Loftus Road, a 1-0 win against Swansea. These are all in recent memory. And then there's the thing about top half and bottom half. Wednesday are right in the middle of the table, and their results reflect perfectly their status in the Championship. Against top half teams, 19 games, 3 wins, only 4 draws and 12 defeats, 13 points from 19 games against top half teams. Against bottom half teams, 16 games, 9 wins, 5 draws and 2 defeats for 32 points from 16 games, 2 PPG. That includes 6 away wins. So they have been pretty comfortable winning away on their travels against poor teams at this level. They also haven't played since last Friday, whereas Argyle played away at Tuesday night in Hull. This will be Argyle's 9th game in 36 days, including matches against Liverpool and Manchester City, 2 of the best teams in the world, where they had to do a lot of defending. They played Hull in midweek and showed absolutely nothing. Didn't have a shot until the 80th minute, lost 2-0. And I think that cup glory has melted away now, and what glory it's been. What an incredible few months it's been for them. But what they're finding now that that's melted away is that the league situation is pretty bleak. They are quite a few points off safety now. The recent results have been poor. Their last 4 league games, they've played poorly and they haven't won. The Cardiff game, which they drew, they probably would have lost had Gutas not been sent off. Lost against Argyle, Hull 2-0, lost against Blackburn 2-0, 1-1 draw with Luton, where they were slightly fortunate and scored a goal to equalise when Luton's key centre-back was off the pitch injured and they were down to 10 men. So essentially, I'm saying the 2 points that they've got in their last 4 games have come with a large chunk of fortune rather than Argyle playing really well. So they've obviously got a bit of a freaky thing at home park where they so regularly score goals in the last 10 minutes of games. I'm hoping that won't be the case here. I'm hoping that Sheffield Wednesday will impose what I think is quite significant dominance in level, performance level and quality over Argyle and win this one at 21-20 with AK Bets. Next up, we'll hear our next bests.
Yeah, my next best is the same as my nap last week. I am backing Morcambe to go to MK Dons and beat them at 3-1.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I was pretty frustrated with how poor Morcambe were on Saturday. And then even more frustrated when they put in a really good performance at home to AFC Wimbledon and beat them. And I guess that shows there was some method in my madness last week, even if they weren't able to show what they're capable of in that away trip. But here, Gillingham obviously played much better in that game. But I was really intrigued to see how MK Dons would react to the departure of Scott Lindsay in midweek, and they went away from home to Accrington Stanley. I sent you and Goffey a message earlier in the day about the prices for that game, where Accrington were kind of 6-4 favourites and MK Dons around 2-1. And I basically said to you guys, I can't think of many occasions where such disparity in terms of quality within 2 teams and squads, where if you look at their back class, you look at what both teams have done in the past, their kind of perceived values, transfer values and everything else. for Accrington's set of players to be favourites, albeit at home, to MK Dons, seems to me like the biggest disparity, despite the in terms of prices and quality. And that is because MK Dons have been terrible. But I kind of wondered, should we chance them? Like, is there a chance that Scott Lindsay's methods, or for whatever reason, it was kind of his toxicity? I'm not saying he's toxic, by the way, but just something that he was doing and his coaching staff was doing that was stinking the place out. And as we often see, maybe, with a departure of somebody who isn't getting results, sometimes it can, see people return to a team return to their normal level under Gladwin, the interim boss. But none of it. They were rancid again against Accrington, really, really poor. And therefore, this is a team who, in every game at the moment, MK, they are creating like nothing by way of goal scoring opportunities, and teams are finding it relatively easy to create against them. And again, they're a side whose season looks over, like they are, their season is petering out pretty quickly. And until we see a reason to think that they are turning it around, until we see any reason why we should expect their results to improve, I think we have to take them on whenever they're anywhere near the price of kind of even money or whatever they are at the moment. Like, this is a dysfunctional team who have little to play for, who are not playing particularly well up against a Morcambe side who still have to battle in the hope that they can make it out of the mess. Up until until the moment they were 2-0 down on Tuesday night against Accrington, MK had one shot and none from open play with an XG of 0.01. Like, they are so bad that it's just an auto bet to get against them until we see any. I learned the hard way on Tuesday night, but an auto bet to get against them wherever we possibly can, especially when they're this kind of price. Like, the way this team are playing, a 50% chance of winning a football match at League Two level just has to be wrong. So yeah, backing Morcambe to win it at 3-1.
Do you want to hear something weird? Dan Crowley, who moved from Notts to MK in something of a blockbuster transfer in January, and understanding that he's not ever has been a shoot first kind of player or a massive goal threat. He's played 11 90s already for MK Dons. He's had one shot total off target.
So weird. I actually think if we have more time, I would love to do like a deep dive into what is going on at MK Dons. I don't think I've ever seen anything like this before. I've never seen, even like with Gillingham, it's kind of happening to an extent, and you could argue with Carlisle. It's actually weird. This is an interesting point.
Even if you say so yourself.
No, thinking about it, in League Two, if you were to rank the squads by basically, again, using like a racing terminology, but by back class, right? If you were to look at what all the players have done in their careers, long and short, and therefore like their inherent value and how good they're perceived to be, if you were to take top 5-6 teams, 3 of them would be MK Dons, Carlisle and Gillingham. And there's a fair argument to say that they are 3 of the 4, maybe 5 worst teams in the whole league, which is mad. It just goes to show that there's so much more to being a good football team than just pure player quality.
Yeah, Carlisle, you've just mentioned. They're my next best, which means we're in that situation where we are, between us, backing the team 71st and 72nd in the EFL. I'm backing Carlisle to beat Harrogate away from home at 2-1. I think that Mark Hughes has completely changed the energy at Carlisle United. I think he has done about as well as anyone was likely to do coming into a team at the lowest of low ebbs and looking completely forlorn and without hope or ideas. Actually, Mark Hughes has injected both of those things. His ideas have mainly been to focus on a core group of players playing in the same system and building relationships over time. And I think we can see that they have done that. Now, they've only won one game under Hughes. They've drawn a couple and they lost his first 2. But I believe the energy's completely changed. I watched them beat Barrow last Thursday night with an early goal that, it was such a slick attacking move. It wasn't just a surprise because Carlisle had barely scored a goal for the last 6 months. It wasn't just a surprise that they were able to put together a move like that. It was the sort of goal you don't often see at League Two level at all. Such was the quality of it. Players playing with their heads up, knowing where their teammates are when they receive the ball, playing first time back-heeled passes, 2 of them in fact it was from Scott and Embleton, and then a really confident touch and finish from Matthew Dennis, who'd squandered a few opportunities in the previous game. I mean, they then drew with Walsall, top of the table Walsall, in what was first v 24th, a 1-1 draw. They had to do a fair amount of defending in that game. I don't think that's a particular surprise. In fact, I think it's a huge boost for betting on Carlisle that we've seen them against Barrow for most of the game and against Walsall for a lot of the game, defending their box properly, actually getting in the way of things, clearing their lines and not being a soft touch. And they've got Breeze in goal, who looks better and better with every single week, a really exciting young goalkeeper. I just think they're playing well. And I think they've got some good players, as you've just discussed with your racing term. Players like Elliot Embleton, like players like Aaron Hayden, who came in and scored a set piece, Sam Lavelle, who's won promotion from this level before. Now, Harrogate I find pretty hard to predict, and have always found Harrogate pretty hard to predict. Ultimately, I don't think they're a side to be feared, necessarily. They've just drawn 0-0 at Vale, so they had a good result against one of the top teams as well in midweek. But interestingly, missing from the squad altogether was Anthony O'Connor, Jack Muldoon, Josh March, and James Daly. I can't find, because Harrogate don't have a roaring hashtag on Twitter, and they don't have an abundant local media scene. I'm struggling to find much information, and Weaver didn't give much away in his post-match. But these guys weren't in the squad entirely. And generally, if you're worried about team news building up to a game, I think as a general rule, if someone has been completely out of a squad, having played the weekend before and out the squad completely at midweek, not even named on the bench, I'm thinking that a couple of those might still be missing here. And if that's true, well, that's their most dominant centre-back in O'Connor. That's their two main strikers in Muldoon and March, and a player in James Daly who's a regular player for them as well. So I think there could be a little light here. And they don't have a great record in games against the bottom teams in that sort of mini-league of bottom 4-5. They beat Accrington at home 2-1 last weekend. But they lost at home to Morcambe. They lost away at Tranmere. They drew away at Accrington, and they drew away at Carlisle. So I don't think they've shown a particular ability to stick teams away that are beneath them in the league table. And yeah, I think ultimately 2-1 the price. I believe that Carlisle, as of last weekend basically, and until the end of the season, I think they are a completely different team to the one that had 21 points from 28 games when Mark Hughes walked in the building. So I guess I'm trying to get in front of them potentially being re-rated as the performances continue to impress and as the results pick up. Carlisle 2-1, my next best to beat Harrogate this weekend. For anyone looking to sign up to AK Bets, use promo code NTT100. There's a link in the show notes which you can click. It'll take you straight to the site and apply the promo code. The offer is if your first bet is an accumulator on football with a minimum of 4 selections, AK Bets will boost the profit gained on that initial bet by 25% in the form of a free bet up to a value of £100. Further T's and C's are accessible on the website. Goalscorer, please, can we have a goalscorer winner? Please.
I feel like I'm just having ridiculous luck with this market at the moment. As we discussed on DAG a second ago, with Rob Street being put up a couple of weeks ago and scoring basically every single Doncaster game apart from when I put him up, and then the Firpo thing last week. Anyway.
We had Murphy as well, remember? Pompey against Oxford, didn't score, then scored a worldie the next game.
I am putting up Harry Smith to score any time for Swindon at 7-2.
In this game or next weekend?
No, this game. I mean, if I can do both for the price of one, I'll do both, if that's allowed.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he's vastly overpriced because Swindon are a big price to win the game, which is understandable. Doncaster's home form is weird for the most part, where they've been much, much better recently. They've won 6 of their last 8 at home, but they concede goals regularly. Only 2 of those wins have come to nil against Newport and Harrogate. They conceded 2 against Grimsby and the 2 under feet, 1 against MK Dons, 2 against Port Vale, 1 against Fleetwood, 1 against Tranmere. They've only kept 2 clean sheets at home since the beginning of October. So even though they're relatively strong at home, at least now, they're not particularly strong from a defensive perspective. We know that Ian Holloway is doing a remarkably good job at Swindon, and I expect them to be competitive here. And in Harry Smith, they've got a player who's been, probably the poster boy and the best player since he came in. We've seen them put up big numbers at times. They scored 5 away at Carlisle. They scored 3 at home to Port Vale. They are, as Ollie teams often are, a really, really constant goal threat. And in Harry Smith, you've got someone who leads the line effectively and we know can score a lot of goals. His goal scoring tally so far this season is 13 from just over 2,000 minutes, so a really good goal record. He scored last time out in the 2-2 draw against Swindon. He scored 4 and 4 in all competitions early on in January. He's someone who, is their likeliest goal scorer. And so I think Swindon are probably a touch big for the game. I think they will cause Donny problems even if they do lose the game. And at 7-2, Smith has to be a bit of value to be the one to do so and score the goal.
Yeah, Lewis Wing, 5-1 is my...
Ping!
Hopefully. Yeah, he's my anytime goal scorer pick. Wing hasn't had less than 2 shots in any of his last 7 games. Now, obviously, these are mostly speculative, and he does have the greenest of light to shoot from anywhere. But he's also as good as anyone in the EFL at shooting from range and scoring from range. And one of his 4 goals this season was one of the goals of the season in the reverse fixture against Crawley at the Madstad, against the goalkeeper Jojo Wallacott, who'll be in nets here, who had absolutely no idea what to do with the speed and swerve on Wing's shot. And I just think that quite early on in this game, Lewis Wing is going to be sending a few early testers at Jojo Wallacott. Both of them will be well aware of what happened the last time they played. Crawley, in my eyes, not a team known for putting a huge amount of pressure on the ball, not a very serious defensive team anyway. They have conceded a lot of shots, and their conversion rate against them is the highest in the division. They concede 14% of the shots faced, which is the highest in the league. They've conceded the most goals in the league this season. And for Wing, it's only 4 goals this season. It's not a huge return. If you stretch to last season as well, it's 13 times any time has landed in 73 league starts, so 17.8% of his league starts. Probability-wise, that would imply around 9-2 shot. We're getting 5-1, so we're a touch above that. It's not insane value, but I just like the angle of Wing versus Wallacott, basically. And I was really keen to back Reading anyway, having done so well for me last week at Wigan. I was a bit freaked out by their performance in midweek, and I didn't think the price was quite as exciting as I was hoping. So this is a way of kind of getting back with Reading rather, and backing Lewis Wing to score at 5-1. What's your long shot?
My long shot is Mansfield to beat Stevenage away from home and both teams to score at 15-2. Nigel Clough, the Mansfield manager, said after the 2-1 defeat against Wrexham a couple of weeks ago, or a couple of weeks ago, live on Sky, he said he couldn't see where the next win was coming from. And that was weirdly prescient because what's happened since has been mad. A 1-1 draw away at Burton and a 0-0 draw at home to Wigan. What could be less mad, I hear you say, than 2 fairly boring draws against poor teams in League One? Well, Mansfield in that 1-1 draw against Burton, they went behind relatively early on. They ended up having 21 shots to 7 against Burton, 4 on target to Burton's 1, which they scored. An XG of 2.5, playing 0.3. They missed the penalty late on. Lucas Akins missed the penalty and then missing the rebound. They had absolutely battered a Burton side that have been in much better form as of late. Some people would have seen that and would have fancied them to beat Wigan. Wigan, who, off the back of this result, sat their manager Sean Maloney. Home to Wigan, they had 22 shots to Wigan's 4, 6 shots on target to Wigan's 0, 1.4 XG to 0.3. Again, battered them, and yet got nothing out of it. We are seeing quite obvious green shoots here from Mansfield's performances. If they continue to play this way and dominate teams, they are going to win points relatively soon. I think they're a big prize to win this. I fancy Stevenage to cause them trouble, though. I think Stevenage are a much better side, especially from an attacking perspective at the moment, compared to both Wigan and to Burton. When you look at Stevenage's defeats at home this season already, they tend to get on the score sheet. They're beaten 2-1 by Huddersfield, they're beaten 2-1 by Wigan, 4-1 by Bolton. And we've seen them rack up pretty good scores recently. They put 4 past Exeter, 3 past Bristol Rovers and the rest. So I don't think Mansfield will be able to shut out Stevenage quite to the extent that they did against Wigan. But again, if they're having 20 plus shots, they should have the better of the game. And it feels like if they maintain this level of performance, then Nigel Clough shouldn't have to wait too long for his first win. So 15-2 for an away win and BTTS is the way I'm playing this.
Yeah, my long shot is to back Newport on the nose. Nostrils full of Newport County, 11-2. They're away at Chesterfield. This is first and foremost, second and foremost, third and foremost. Doesn't make sense. An anti-Chesterfield stance.
These are your 2 beach teams, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. Except one of them seems to thrive on the beach, and one of them is just getting sand in places they don't want. I'm astounded at how much Chesterfield appear to have pretty much downed tools. Now, I've referenced it a couple of times on the pod. I wasn't actually expecting it to be quite as significant as I thought when I first mentioned it. But Paul Cook's interview after they lost against Walsall, having given up a lead and missed a few chances in the first half and then lost 3-1 in the end, was so aggressive and anti his players and so disappointed and so sort of impetuous, really, basically saying like, well, if we'd won this, playoffs are still on, but we didn't, and so they're not. So how's his team responded to that? Well, they played Swindon. They lost a 1-0 at Swindon. They had 5 shots in the game, 2 on target, only one of them inside the box. They lost 1-0 to Swindon in that game. They played against Crew Alex back at home. They lost 3-1. The XG 2.18 for Crew, 1.2 for Chesterfield, 3-1 defeat at home. Then in midweek, they went to Colchester. They lost by 1-0. They had 6 shots, none on target, only 2 inside the box. They gave up 13, 2 big chances, one of which Colchester took and won 1-0. Paddy Madden was sent off in that game. They're in really poor form, and I'm not really trusting them to suddenly sort it out or work it out. They've got so many players absent as well. If you look at Chesterfield's squad on Transfermarkt, it's one of the most mental things ever. Mm-hmm. There's like 5 players that you forget they even have, and almost all of them are like 34 years old and you forgot we're playing for Chesterfield. But half of them are out at the moment. They're missing tons of players. Here are some quotes from the assistant manager after the last game against Colchester. We never looked like scoring, and it was a free header for the goal, so it's a really disappointing run at the moment. We're not coming away from any game at the minute saying we should have won that or got a draw. We're not creating anything, and the goals we are conceding are avoidable, so hopefully it changes soon. We want to keep clean sheets and score goals, and we are doing neither. It's a real shame for the supporters here tonight and back home. The season is petering out, but there is still quite a lot of games to go, so we need to liven up or it'll be a flat end to the season. It's just not good quotes, that. It's not good quotes, and so I want to get against them. Now, Newport, I haven't had a steer on all season. Anytime I say something positive because they've won a game or 2, they then lose the next 3. Every time I point out that their underlying numbers are absolutely honking and I can't understand how they have 12 wins and 43 points, they then win the next 2 games. They're pretty bad away from home over the course of the season. But in midweek, they beat Gills. Bobby Campbell scored a hat-trick. I think we know that him and David Ajiboye provide a threat, particularly against teams that give them space to play into. And I think that will be the case for Chesterfield here. There seems to be something about Newport, character, personality, intangibles, whatever you want to call it. The fact that they've picked up a surprising amount of points, even in games where they've been up against it. And right now, I think the opposite about Chesterfield. So if Newport can concentrate, defend their box properly and get something on the break from their wingers, I think this 11-2 chart has a chance. So my long shot, Newport County to beat Chesterfield 11-2, 6.5, the decimal. Now in our quest to find a joint bet winner, where we've had some joy earlier in the season, but not for a couple of weeks. We're doing that thing that managers do where they don't really know what the problem is, where they just chop and change, constantly chop and change. So may we present the Win-to-nil fourfold at 50-1, which, George, includes
Oxford to lose to 0 at Norwich on Friday night. We haven't scored in our last 4 away from home, drawing 0 at Derby and Stoke, losing 1-0 to Burnley and West Brom. Burnley and West Brom beat us really comfortably in those 2 games, and we never really looked like scoring in either, if we're honest. We've lost to 0 against all of the top 4 this season. I really hope we see more of an attacking threat, but the evidence to hand suggests to me that this is going to be a pretty difficult task for us. The only thing that slightly concerns me here is that Norwich have thrashed basically all the teams at the bottom of the Championship, but done so conceding. It's weird, this. They've beaten Swansea 5-1, Stoke 4-2, Luton 4-2, Argyle 6-1, the 4-0 win over Hull, the only win-to-nil within those. But I think Gary Rowett will set Oxford up to try and contain and to try and get a point in this one. And if they pin us, as I think they do, I don't think we'll offer too much by way of riposte. And then Burnley home to Luton. Burnley's and James Trafford's incredible clean sheet record in the league is over after conceding against Cardiff in midweek. But that doesn't change the fact they're still a very, very good defensive side. Luton, one of the worst away teams in the league. They create precious little generally in games and even less away from home. And I think Burnley should be able to manage this one relatively comfortably and shouldn't concede too much by way of chances, even if Luton are true to their form and even true to the form of their last game against Portsmouth, which they won 1-0, but created very little still in that game. So, 2 home wins in the Championship for me, Norwich and Burnley.
Yeah, I'm adding a home win in League Two. Salford to beat Crewe to 0. Crewe are in somewhat vulnerable form at the moment, looking vulnerable in that 7th spot. 3 blanks in their last 8 away games, and 4 times scoring just the 1. Charlotte Tracy picked up a horrible injury in midweek and will be missing for the rest of the season. They have got Chris Long and Omar Bogle back. They were off the bench in midweek, but neither of those players have been particularly able to contribute on a consistent level going forward this season. So I think Crewe's attacking threat is diminished at the moment. And Salford have won 7 of their 17 home games to 0. They haven't been in the best defensive form, to be honest, but I think with Adelican, with Namai, who both sparkled in midweek against Swindon, they've got plenty of threats. I think that they should win this game. I think if they do, the win-to-nil price is attractive. And then all the way to Sunday midday. So with your first game happening on Friday night and mine Sunday midday, we just got to hope that we get to this point. It's Portsmouth Leeds. I'm backing Leeds to win to 0. Obviously, they're a short price to win the game, as they always are. And I like the win to 0 price, really from a kind of tactical and just matchup standard as matchup point of view as much as anything. So Portsmouth, good side at home, have been all season. But in their last game, the midfield 2 is Dozzell and Hayden, and the front 4 is Ritchie right wing, Murphy left wing, and Oshish number 10 with Colby Bishop up top. It might be that they drop Oshish and try for a bit more sturdiness in midfield. I just think they're going to find it really hard in terms of speed and physicality. They're really lacking compared to Leeds' midfielders and defenders. And I think if you look at Hull, who troubled Leeds a bit, if you look at West Brom, who troubled Leeds a bit, you know, you have to get the counter-attacks right. You have to be a team basically that really excels at counter-attacking. And I don't think that is Portsmouth necessarily. Murphy's obviously a threat on his own, but I'm not sure overall they have enough to match Leeds in terms of physicality, in terms of pace and execution on the break. I think basically, I don't think Portsmouth will spend that much time in Leeds' half, and I don't think they'll get close to Leeds' goal frequently. And so I like the Leeds to win to 0 price. So it's a 50-1 win to 0 fourfold. Just beware that the first game is on Friday night at presumably 8 o'clock. So if you want to back it at 50-1 with AK Bets, you need to do so before then. And you can do so on the special section of the football part of the AK Bets website. But just to run through it, it's Norwich to 0, it's Burnley to 0, it's Salford to 0, and it's Leeds United to 0. 50-1 being offered by AK Bets for the fourfold. George, please recap your selections. We've got something really special to play us out today. Really special.
Exciting. Bradford even money away at Gillingham is my nap. Morcambe at 3-1 away at MK Dons is my next best. Mansfield and BTTS at 15-2 is my long shot. Stevenage, Harry Smith anytime at 7-2 for Swindon is my goal scorer. Up the away teams this weekend, please.
Yes, thank you. I am backing away from home a team called Sheffield Wednesday at Plymouth at 21-20. Carlisle had to scroll up. Carlisle away at Harrogate at 2-1. Lewis Wing for Reading away at Crawley at 5-1 to score any time. And Newport County at 11-2 to win away at Chesterfield. The win-to-nil fourfold at 50-1 with AK Bets is Norwich, Burnley, Salford and Leeds all to win 2-0. Thank you, AK Bets, for sponsoring the pod, and you, yes, you, for listening or watching to it. Go well.